Hey, LA Progressive friends and family. I'm here today with Butch Ware. And in case Butch's name is familiar to you, he was Jill Stein's running mate in the most recent presidential election. And he just did such an outstanding job. I saw him in many videos and decided I want to talk to this young man. So, Butch, welcome and tell us what you're doing right now.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be with you, Sharon. And I'm running for governor in the state of California. Decided that, this was no time to be taking the foot off of the gas, that we had momentum, organizing, had brought together, a coalition, including lots of progressives, radicals, leftists, and lots of Muslim Americans, people of color, folks that hadn't necessarily been in political community with one another in previous electoral cycles. So this seemed like an opportunity to build, and I've been in the state of California teaching at UC Santa Barbara for 6 years. This is my home state. And so service here seemed like the best move to continue our work of organizing and building an authentic third party movement that's capable of, defeating these corporate war criminals and fascists. So we're trying to build that organization by fundraising vigorously and building an infrastructure block by block, in our communities.
Awesome. Now, from where I sit, you look like a young man. I think you're a young man. So, you arrive. What was it in your life that led you to hold the political perspectives that you currently hold? How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could claim to be young. I'm 51 years old, but I appreciate the compliment. You can relate to this. Even light skinned black don't crack. Those of us that are brown, as long as we take care of ourselves, we can hold it together, stay looking young, and you're looking young as well, Miss Sharon. What I would say, and I've talked about this before. So I was born in Washington, D.C., nation's capital. Um, the juxtaposition between the kind of height of power and authority that was a mile or so away from the ghetto that I lived in Northeast DC, never living at the same street address for a calendar year until I was 9 years old. Like it couldn't have been a more stark juxtaposition. And so I came up with like an acute consciousness of like the fundamental inequalities. One of the most segregated, cities and one of the most segregated times. DC was 95% black at that point in time. You could go for weeks without seeing a white person in the neighborhood that I lived in. As I got older, I ended up moving to the south side of Minneapolis, living there. When I was there at age 15, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I read that book cover to cover in one night. I could not put it down. To me, it remains the most powerful narrative of spiritual redemption ever penned in the English language. Malcolm was brutally honest about how dark some of the places that he had been in his life actually were. And so seeing this transformation that was both spiritual and political, I wanted what Malcolm had. And I went out the next day to my school library and I checked out an English translation of the Quran. I converted to Islam before the week was out. And that was the beginning of my own kind of personal spiritual journey with my faith. That's part of the reason why I ended up studying the history of Islam and Islamic resistance movements in Africa. Malcolm was very, oriented towards, instructing Black folk to seek out the past before America had, kind of done what it's done to us. So it was a spiritual transformation, but it was also a political transformation. All of the rage, all of the pain that I had experienced in this white supremacist society, Malcolm introduced me to the Black radical tradition and to the tools that would be necessary in order to dismantle these structures of inequality that had harmed me and so many people around me. So by the time I was 17, 18 years old, I had started a Pan-Africanist radical reading group. I ended up doing my PhD research in West Africa, studying radical resistance movements, and I've been an activist, organizer, and scholar ever since. The big shift in kind of my the expression of those concerns for me really has been in the past 6 7 months when Dr. Jill Stein invited me on to the Green Party presidential ticket, it was really an opportunity for me to take work that I have been doing in community settings for decades, and now bring that to a national political audience. So that's what I'm trying to do in this moment is to kind of crystallize the fruit of that Black radical struggle tradition. You know, the Panthers, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, the Assata Shakurs, and really bring the lessons of the Black radical tradition into this moment. Because let's just be clear about this, like the reason why they came after Malcolm in 65, reason why they came after Fred Hampton is that when that Black radical tradition is activated, it actually reaches outside of just our community. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale were putting, white working class folks on game and getting people organized. Black power is leading to brown power and leading to rainbow coalitions. And I think that we have a unique opportunity in this moment to build a coalition that is capable of restoring power to our communities. Because right now, the corporate duopoly, teams red and blue, have disenfranchised everyone.
Absolutely. When I listen to you speak, there really is nothing that I disagree with. I too read the autobiography of Malcolm X in one night. I too was transformed by receiving that information. And I remember once I was teaching a class, and I really didn't realize that my perspectives, this was a class on contract law. I was a law professor at People's
Mhm.
College of Law. And I didn't realize that my ideology was coming through in the way that I spoke, even in the way that I taught contract law. And then one day my husband came with me to my class. And most people that listen or watch the LA Progressive or read the LA Progressive know that my husband is white. And so when my husband came into the class and I introduced the class to him, after he left, one of my students said, "Your husband is white?" And, I said, "Yeah, why? What's the problem?" They said, "Well, the way that you present, what you project, it surprises us that you're married to a white man." And what I had to come to terms with is I obviously do not have anything against white people, but I am
Yeah.
totally against white supremacy.
And
And so
that's all it
that's
comes down
what,
to.
right, right. That's what we have to fight. And that's what we all have to fight, not just Black people, right?
A hundred,
So
100%. I mean, so I've said it a number of times. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I don't hate white people. I hate white supremacy. And like this task of collective liberation, it necessitates that we realize that white supremacy is not just a white people problem either. Bell Hooks, brilliant black female theorist, spoke about this. She said white supremacy it permeates all of our institutions. It's not a white people problem over there. And that was one of the things, frankly, that was so galling in the way that the Harris campaign ran, is that they ran using, the accoutrements of blackness to promote a white supremacist politics. They ran a kind of, black cultural or identity politics that was very, very, much in service of white supremacy, the carceral state, genocidal imperialism abroad, the whole nine.
right, right. And so one of the things that I find extremely exciting about your campaign, I'm looking at your website right now. I'm going to give you a thumbs up for a few things. I'm going to give you a thumbs down for one thing, and that is
Hey,
you can't
we're here for the feedback. Come on.
fight good. Okay, so the thumbs up. I love the fact that you have this learning community on your website, because I guarantee you that there are people who will be listening to this interview who do not necessarily understand what you're talking about when you talk about identity politics. That term is just kind of bantered around, and most people don't really have a deep understanding about a lot of these terms that are related to the racialization of communities in the United States. So that's a big plus. The volunteer area is a big plus, and I've already signed up for the learning community. But I can't find a whole lot of information about you. So, so let's talk about your leadership, how you honed your leadership skills. I mean, obviously, you're just coming off of a campaign, so you, I guess, maybe learned about campaigning by fire. But tell us about your leadership and how you would govern.
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing that I will say, just to pick up where you started, the revolutionary learning community that you find on the website, the mutual aid and direct action, that's all there. In addition to, the opportunity to volunteer, to join the community, to donate. You can find that all, www.butchware4gov.com, and the
That
number
four
four
is
in
the
there.
number four. So
That
Butch
four,
Ware,
that four is
the
the number
number
four.
four, um, gov
Gov.
dot com.
Yeah. So I just why that revolutionary learning community, and I happen to have it on my desk because for on Sunday we're going to be reading Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton in the book club. So do feel free. That's a free book club. People that are listening to this should log on and join. It's a good way to kind of get to learn kind of what we're about. Um, so what the Panthers focused on time and time again was political education, political education, political education. They always said our people need political education. So as a lifelong, scholar and teacher and instructor, I'm taking the educational task seriously, like the political education component seriously. Now, with respect, to my own, leadership style, how I would govern, this has been like a profound transition for me in terms of how I apply a skill set that I've been honing over decades to a new environment, right? Because I'm going to tell you the truth about this is that you can run 20 years and there's literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours of me speaking in public, venues, doing community organizing work. For the past 10 plus years, I've given 70 to 80 public lectures a year, all over the country, all over the world. But in none of them will you find me talking about running for elected office because I was more focused on doing the work in community. And I really had to be pulled in to the electoral political domain in order for me to see that this was what was needed in the moment. So the first thing I'll say is why I think that this is what's needed in the moment. And it's summed up in something the great Kwame Ture said, the great Stokely Carmichael. He said, revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues, revolutionaries organize against systems. And what I've seen, especially in the kind of social media activist space, and indeed in the activist space, IRL, in real life, has been a lot of mobilizing around issues. People came out to protest the Floyd murder, and there's an uprising in that space. People have come out for Free Palestine, movement. I just came back from Sacramento, beautiful march organized by NorCal Resist to resist ICE raids and to protest immigration policy. But what we've seen time and time again, unfortunately, is that mobilization around the issue has not translated into organization against the system, and that political party organizing has actually always played a really crucial role in channeling the people's energy from mobilization into organization. The construction of a political party helps you contest power. And power, not just voice, not just visibility, not just protest, is what is required to take our struggle to the next phase. Because right now, let's just be honest about this. We are getting the brakes beaten off of us in every single social domain because capitalism is organized. White supremacy is organized. Imperialism is organized. And to go back to Malcolm, Malcolm said, we are not outnumbered, we are outorganized. We actually have the capacity to resist, but we need to build new forms of solidarity. So how I would govern and a little bit more about my own, sort of path. Listen, my father was a locksmith and a hustler who had a sixth grade education. I got a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and I taught at the top institutions for my field of African history in the world. I taught at Northwestern University for 4 years, University of Michigan for 10, and now UC Santa Barbara for 6. So 20 years doing this. In my first year as an assistant professor, 30 years old, I wrote a grant proposal to the Ford Foundation, and it ended up being funded for multi-million-dollar grant over a number of years. So I was managing in my early 30s research teams on 4 continents, and trying to put an organizational structure that could like actually lead to not just academic and intellectual change, but to social change writ large across communities. So I started the work of essentially trying to put my intellectual life in service of communities and to do that work of organizing. And that's just how I'm wired. Whatever environment you drop me into, I'm going to try to get to the most transformative understanding of the nature of the problem, and then organize teams of people to attack a problem at its root. So that's the way that we're building our campaign structure, and that's also the way that we will govern. One last thing that I'll say about that is that my own, leadership style is that I do not believe in this and this is one of the reasons why, like the Green Party, running with the Green Party makes so much sense to me, resonates with me at a personal level. They have a model for 40 years now of decentralized representative democracy. I'm not one of these top-down people that seeks to micromanage how the work gets done. The goal is to articulate a vision that brings people together, that is clear in its moral and intellectual priorities and the need to serve every single person, but capacious enough for people to find themselves in it. And then empowering the people at the ground level to do the work in the community. So that's how we're building the campaign. And when we're successful, that's how we're going to govern. Very different from the autocratic, anti-democratic corporate style of both teams red and blue.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you will be running in a very different way and governing in a very different way. I'm in the middle of writing a piece about how so many people lean towards strongmen or authoritarian figures to solve their problems. And that's exactly the opposite of what they should be doing, especially if they value democracy. I've come to the conclusion that most people in this country don't value democracy. And it's going to take, I don't know what, almost like turning the Titanic to educate them about why authoritarianism is exactly what we don't need. So in addition to governing in a way that is anti-authoritarian, how do you reach the people so that they can understand what democracy even is?
Again, so like that goes back to that piece about political education. Um, and I while I agree with your analysis, I think that I'm slightly more optimistic in the following fashion, and especially for the work that we can do here in the state of California. So let me explain what I mean by that. With the national political picture, I think that there was probably something akin to about 15 million people that might have otherwise voted Democrat. I'm just kind of, rubber stamped Team Blue and whatever they were doing, that could not do that. They could not hold their nose and vote for genociders this time around. And so they stayed at home. They opted out. I actually think that there is a similar number of people that maybe 15 million, who knows exactly how many, that did hold their nose and vote for Team Red. And what I mean by that is that you have a lot of Bernie Trump voters and even some Trump voters who are actually persuadable, who are not in their core fascist or white supremacist the way that we know Trump himself is. It's just that they don't necessarily see a difference between blue criminals and red criminals, and all other things being equal would rather pay lower taxes. And I think that if you make a cogent argument towards that group, you can pull in a lot of people who might be loosely affiliated with Team Red. And this is not just a theory. In the last 2 polls that came out before the election, Dr. Jill and I were actually pulling more registered Republicans into our camp than we were pulling registered Democrats. The majority of people that voted for us were people that wouldn't have voted for either of those two teams at all. But nonetheless, we were drawing in a lot of folks from that demographic. And it was partially because I was messaging in this way that is beyond kind of traditional partisan understanding. So now let's look at how this could play out in the state of California. In the state of California, the state leans so liberal slash progressive that we have as many independents in the state of California as we have Republicans, which means that there is actually an opportunity to draw a large progressive coalition, pull away some of those folks that have been associated with the right, and especially to drill down on those independents. Because if you look at the polling, 70% of independents nationwide say, and these are the exact words from the poll, that the Democrats and Republicans do such a poor job. That's literally such a poor job that we need a viable third party alternative. That's 70% of independents. But 53% of Democrats in that same poll said the same. 48% of Republicans in that same poll said the same. So half of all partisans think that the system is completely and fundamentally broken. In another poll, 63% of the American electorate writ large said that, again, such a poor job by these two parties that we need a third party. So my theory of the case is that by just answering simple, straightforward questions about affordable housing, housing is a human right, healthcare is a human right, pulling power back and giving it back to the people and taking away from the corporations. These are 70-30, 80-20 issues with the American people. And if I make that case, with clarity, I think that we have the capacity to do real damage to the duopoly right here in the state of California. That it's going to bring not just your traditional progressives out, but everybody that is starting to perceive just how broken this system is. I mean, just think about the fact that a healthcare executive, gets debrained in downtown Manhattan, and the first thing that happens across the country is people rejoice because the system of healthcare is so broken that like everybody just has this kind of cathartic moment because everybody has somebody that's suffered from the restrictions of these healthcare companies. Well, here in the state of California, the Democrats passed single payer healthcare when Schwarzenegger was governor because they knew he would veto it. And then as soon as he was out of power, they've been playing games the whole time. Yeah, they could have passed that universal healthcare for the state of California at any point in time, but they are too deep. Their souls are folded up on little pieces of paper down in the health insurance lobby's pockets. So they refuse to do it, even though they have super majorities. And I think that we can rally a group of Californians to say that we are not here to have you disrespect the rights of our immigrant brothers and sisters. We're not here to have you spending our tax dollars blowing kids up in other countries. Alameda County divested from the apartheid state. Multiple municipalities in the state of California have divested from the apartheid state. We have an opportunity to bring together a coalition and restore power back to the people.
Absolutely. Well, I'm telling you, you just inspired me. No, I think that what you bring to the table, I mean, in addition to your political ideology, is that there is hope, that we shouldn't just lay down and say, oh man, we really do have an opportunity here, especially in California. We do have an opportunity. So let's see, as we close, let me see what we can close with here. Are you going to add some more stuff about yourself on your website?
Yes. So thank you for circling back to that. I mean, I'll be clear. Like I'm reticent to do so insofar as for me, again, it's about running on the issues. I'm not running for media time. I'm not run like again, this is not ego tripping for me because I have never had the aspiration of doing this. I'm doing this because I need to be in service to community, and this is the best opportunity to be in service to community. But I do understand that, like, having people get to know me a little bit better and having elements of my narrative and my story and my past are important. When you're running. So yes, since you've made it an item, I'm gonna bring it to my team, and they've been trying to pull me in that direction. My own natural inclination is to focus on the problems that we need to solve, rather than telling my story. But my story does intersect with a lot of the problems that we need to solve. Like a lot of people won't know that like my father battled mental health and addiction issues, and spent a couple decades of his life on and off the street. So when I'm talking about the problem of homelessness, and resolving the problem of homelessness in the state of California, the only way that it can, with solutions like affordable housing, with actually having mental health services covered by your universal health care, that's not an abstract question for me. Like that's something that would have saved my dad's life, right? And it's true, like they say, who feels it knows, right? Like if you have been on the underside of these systems, then you have an understanding of like the real human toll that they take. I'll give another example. You talked about, being married to a white man. I was married to a black woman for 19 years. Had beautiful children together, and ultimately, the relationship wasn't salvageable. 5.5 years ago, I met a beautiful Mexican American, woman. We got married. She is the daughter. She was born here, but both of her parents came to this country undocumented. And when I heard the story of how my mother-in-law, right, did not see her brother for 23 years because she was afraid to cross back into Mexico lest she not be able to return. All I can think about is all of the families that were separated and broken amongst my ancestral lineage. And for what? For the same white supremacist capitalist nonsense, for the same easy control over an exploitable labor force. And when
Yeah,
you start to understand the
right.
connectedness of the stories, and when it hits home, when it's in your own household, when it's in your own family, then you fight with a different kind of fervor and a different kind of intensity. And I'm going to bring that fight one way or the other. I'm going to bring that fight. So yeah, that's what I'll say, is that we're trying to bring together a coalition that is rooted in meeting people's basic needs. And the last thing I'll say about that, you mentioned hope. See, I actually happen to believe that if we can get past this moment in our history, that the best stage of our history is still in front of us. The American empire is crumbling. That part is obvious. But what could happen in the ashes of the American empire is all of the money that was wasted trying to exert control over the rest of the world and extract resources. Those are our tax dollars that are being used to incinerate, camps in Rafah and so on and so forth. If we can put those resources to work for all of the people, starting in a place like California, we are going to set the tone for the entire nation, because whatever happens in California transforms the United States of America. If California, if all the states were independent nations, California would have the fifth largest economy in the world. If we fix California, the rest of the dominoes will fall. So while everybody else is going, oh, woe is me, oh, Trump is doing this, Trump is doing that. No, we're getting organized and we are fighting back. And because we know, and let me just be blunt about this, and I'm gonna say this, I know this is LA progressive, but we're gonna have some liberals, listening, and I don't have my fight's not with the liberals. My fight is with the Democratic leadership. Y'all need to go see your people, because your people now work for the corporations. I've never been a liberal, but if I was and I was trying to get accomplished the things that liberals say that they want to get accomplished, then I would be riding for this new third party movement. And the simple reason is that both of those parties now, Team Blue and Team Red, are so far to the right that there is no redeeming them for a kind of bread and butter American family. Like you really need to get down with a third party option, because those two are gone. Like they're departed, bought and paid for. We need to build an alternative.
You're absolutely right. Dr. Butch Ware. Please, everybody listening, go to butchware4gov.com. That's Butch Ware, WARE, for the number 4gov.com. Butch, it's been such a pleasure, really, really a pleasure. And thank you for lifting up my hopes.
Amen. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure for me as well. Look forward to coming back and talking with y'all again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for sticking around. If you like the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.